I know it's crazy. I know.
Some watchbird you are. What are you going to do? Laugh him to death?
Vincent, I have some lovely Black Forest cake that I made.
Mother can only move her fingers.
You're not gonna tell me you got herpes. What did you call me, you crazy shithead? Porno Palace is on Broadway. Get him!
You to wear the red mat jersey. Nadine can wear the Putana dress. Every single pound shows in that outfit. All right, ladies. I've got $500,000 in heavy action out there, so let's not fuck it up.
Yeah. Anybody that cuts a cake with a butcher knife interests me. Another one at the Royal Arms. This one's in pieces.
You want me to go along?
Not the way you're dressed. Meet me at the morgue in 30 minutes.
Probably a scalpel or a razor blade. Then a large carving knife or a butcher knife. Of course, you can't roll out a meat cleaver.
You better shut up or I'm going to be arrested for molesting a minor.
Hi, I'm Spice Williams Crosby from Fatal Games, and you are listening to Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues. It's episode 224, and this time we're headed to New York City for Mike Connors, he produced this, Mike Connors' Too Scared to Scream, from 1985, but it was made significantly earlier than that date, so I'm sure we'll discuss that coming up. So, yes, welcome back to the show. And Erik, are you ever too scared to scream?
Only when I'm forced to listen to Susie and the Banshees records. They're so horrendous.
Well, I seem to remember, Erik, you actually own some, don't you?
They were presents from a nasty, evil villain.
I remember you saying you bought them. I just wondered why you buy them if you hated them so much.
Look over there!
Well, and Nathan, are you ready not to fuck it up?
Yes, I am ready not to do that.
Not to do what, Nathan? Say it.
Come on, I cussed a lot in the intro to Serial Mom.
Yes, but do you think there by any small chance that RuPaul had watched Too Scared to Scream?
I was wondering that as well.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, why not?
Well, he was in New York at the time, wasn't he? He was a kind of in the early 80s. He was a sort of New York performance artist. So I wonder. So anyway, and Joseph, how are you doing this fine morning?
I am very tired. I'm too scared to dream.
Right. Well, let's see if we can pep you up with this crazy early 80s. This is it's a film I haven't seen for a number of years, and I was quite keen to cover it just because I didn't remember a huge amount about it. But yeah, we'll cover that. We'll obviously come on to that a little bit later. But before we do, I know there's a few films that we've all watched together. Well, not together, but we've all seen. So are recently seen. So starting with you, Nathan, what have you been watching recently?
Okay, well, I watched a movie. It was called Stab, and it's basically a Scream, like a fan film, but it's almost like they're doing like a full version of the Stab movie from within Scream, if you know what I mean. And I thought it was actually, if you could get past the very low budget, I thought it was a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know how anybody else would feel, but it did kind of make me laugh because the killer in it apparently can disappear, because he literally will disappear in different, like on screen, like he'll literally fade away on screen. So, that was a new twist for me. But no, it's worth it. And if anybody's interested, I know it's on YouTube because that's where I saw it.
Okay. I've not, I know we covered, didn't we, when we did the Friday 13th, Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow, some of the other fan films. So I know there's like a million Halloween ones and obviously the Friday 13th ones and Nightmare on Elm Street ones as well. So it kind of goes to, it's not a great surprise, there's Scream ones as well. So, but you said was it well done apart from Disappearing Killer?
Yes. Like I said, it's really low budget. You could tell it's pretty much a no budget production, but I like the little twist at the end, too. I didn't guess it, so that's always a plus for me.
Cool. Okay. And Erik, Joseph, have you seen Stab?
No, I only saw the tiny clip that Nathan sent us during the week, but I thought it did look kind of funny.
The only thing I saw was Slab, which was it was a documentary on Erik's latest conquest.
You whore!
Enjoy your laughing while you can, because you'll see.
I hate you!
I was letting you get your new soundboard in action, Erik.
Yeah, Erik has got a new setup. So the days of his meltdowns, not the Inga meltdowns, there probably is plenty of those to come. And if you've listened to this month's Patreon quiz, then you would certainly have got your fill there.
Oh, how can you just look at me like that and laugh at me?
But yes, so Erik, we're not going. You're flying full, aren't you? Full. I'm trying to think of the right term, but you're basically up and running, aren't you?
Yeah, I was saying to you guys, like my old MacBook would comfortably heat the apartment. It used to get so hot because it's almost 10 years old, same age as me. So I bought myself a new MacBook, which stays icy cold and it's super fast. But when I start downloading all that porn, it'll sort of start corrupting itself.
Oh, Erik.
Yeah,
so
that will happen.
10 years is your mental age?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Hence this.
Yes, sadly, we were talking off air about when you update your operating system, sometimes the programs you have won't work, and unfortunately, Erik was able to get another soundboard, so I do apologise for that. But Nathan, is there anything else you've been watching?
Well, the other two are the two that we're going to discuss, so that's all I have individual-wise.
Well, before we do that, then Erik, how about you?
Okay, well, I finally got to see The Hunt, which was streaming on Now TV, and this was the film that Blumhouse released, I think it was in March, just sort of pre-lockdown, because I think it was one of those ones that came out, didn't it, where you could pay $20 to watch it streaming in the first lockdown. Anyway, this is, I know some of you have seen it. It's the story of the supposed sort of right-wing folk who are hunted by the liberal elite. They're sort of kidnapped and taken to a sort of a wilderness in Croatia, it turns out. Is that a spoiler? I'm not sure. Anyway, I really liked it. I think you guys have said it's fun the way it exposes the flaws of both sides of the argument. And, the only real hero of the film as such is neutral. So I liked the way they've done that. But what I just loved was that they take the high concept and it could be kind of a downbeat movie, but they've injected it with so much fun. And there's, it has the thrills and spills, but the film I just found purely entertaining from start to finish. It's done with its tongue in its cheek, and I found that there was a great surprise early on where they pulled the rug from under the audience. They do a Janet Leigh on the audience when let's say a high-profile star in the cast list doesn't quite make it very far into the film, which I thought was a huge surprise. But I just found the pace of it really blisteringly fast. I thought it had a likable central character, and a huge thumbs up for me. I thought it had elements of The Most Dangerous Game, but also something like Cabin in the Woods. It had elements of. So I was really pleasantly surprised. I wasn't expecting to like it because I'm not usually into these kind of battle royale type movies as much. But this one I really enjoyed. So you've seen it, haven't you, Nathan?
Yes, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I'm going to be careful not to spoil anything, but I thought the big battle at the end was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Because it's not like the characters, stop for one-liners. Like, they take breaks because they're exhausted from fighting.
Yeah.
There is one good scene where one character's going to throw another through a glass door or something like that, and they'd already busted through a lot of glass, and the character's like, wait, no more glass.
Yeah, so they opened the door instead. Yeah, I know. That was fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's not serious at all. I enjoyed it.
Have you seen it, Justin?
Yeah, I saw it a while back, because that was the film that was delayed, wasn't it? Because there was a big hoo-ha about it being a sort of anti-conservative thing. But in fact, actually, I mean, neither kind of side really comes off particularly well, do they?
No, which is I suppose the good thing about it. Yeah, you can't be offended by it, whichever side of the political divide you're on.
No. So what about you, Joseph? You've seen it, I presume?
No, I've not had the pleasure.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Erik. Anything else?
Okay, well, the only other one, the other ones I saw were the two we're going to discuss, so I don't know who wants to lead in with them first.
Well, why don't you take one?
Okay, I'll take one. I'll take Freaky, which is this is the latest film from Christopher Landon, which has just landed on streaming, and he is the director of probably one of my favourite horror films of recent years, which was Happy Death Day. And I thought a sequel was pretty darn good as well, although it plays more as kind of a science fiction teen movie. So what he did previously, of course, he did the time loop slasher movie with the first Happy Death Day. Then he did an alternate dimension slasher-ish type movie with the sequel. And for this one, he's done the body swap slasher movie. So it's high concept, and I thought it worked really well. I mean, I didn't think it was as good as the Happy Death Day movies, because in those films it had a great central character. I can't remember the actress's name, but I thought she was terrific. I thought there was a real heart to the first those two films, particularly the second one, which had many scenes that were kind of like totally totes emosh. But in this one, I was surprised by some of the gore in the film. I mean, there's one scene where somebody is buzzsawed in half in gory close-up. But again, like with The Hunt, this film is done with so much humour that it makes it kind of very breezy and very entertaining to watch. And I thought it just zipped by really fast. I loved the fact that the main action takes place on Friday the 13th as well. And then we get graphics that pop up saying like Wednesday the 11th. We get sort of for the prologue, then Tuesday the 12th, and it comes up in kind of really sort of exploitation VHS art font, the name, you know, for what day of the week it is. I thought that was great fun. There's an opportunity for it to have that kind of heart of Happy Death Day or Happy Death Day to You, because the central character is supposed to be this bullied teen, which I never kind of believed in, because I think she's too pretty and too well dressed to be believable as this kind of Carrie White type character. So that bit probably didn't work as much for me, but I thought there was great fun. I mean, Vince Vaughn is good as the sort of serial killer that she swaps bodies with. I thought he ran pretty well like a teenage girl in sort of those earlier scenes where after the body swap happens. I just thought it was really good fun. I know we're sort of split on our opinions on this, but I mean, I love these Blumhouse comedy horror movies that they're churning out. I mean, this and The Hunt, and then, you know, the Happy Death Day movies, and there's lots of them out there. I mean, I think for me, they're more fun than the ones that they get all the kudos for, like Us and Get Out. So I thought it was a thumbs up for me for Freaky. Not as good as Happy Death Day or its sequel, but still really entertaining. Joseph, I know you disagree.
Yeah, for me, Freaky had a great concept, but I felt the execution was kind of rife with a lot of problems. Firstly, the kills in and of themselves, they're really good. And I especially love that opening sequence that it sort of crosses the old campfire urban legend shtick with the opening of Wes Craven's Scream, when you get the parents coming home and finding their child, hung up. I thought that was pretty interesting. But for me, the problem lies in the fact that this film kind of also wants to be this character drama, which isn't a bad thing, but the drama surrounding the main girl, Millie, it just feels so manufactured, and, you know, half the time it doesn't know if it's Arthur or Martha. I mean, for instance, you have the mother as this sort of token drunk disappointment, but from what I see on screen, she kind of dotes on her daughter with all these lavish breakfasts, and she coddles her. And I mean, she's more or less this real mother character, overbearing but well-meaning. So we're to assume by, you know, simple shots of an empty bottle, or, you know, her spending a night on the couch, that she's supposed to be this routinely drunken disappointment. And I don't know, it felt like, you know, teen girls have a lot of problems. Why'd you have to, you know, go through the whole, okay, we'll just make her mama drunk. The main characters are also kind of inflicted with plot armor, and so the kills are kind of reserved for the quote unquote deserving. And I've never really been a fan of that kind of conceit in slasher films. I'd much rather care about the victims. So what you essentially have is this, ghoulish effects reel, and, not much more to the characters. I think the acting across the board is really good. And, Vince Vaughn, he seems to be getting a lot of kudos for his performance. But for me, it's the girl playing Millie who, she steals the show, especially when she plays host to the Blissfield Butcher. For me, Vaughn kind of plays the Millie character as this almost spaced out cheerleader from Sweet Valley High. And he's always like, oh no, oh wow. The Millie we've seen up until the switch, she's kind of this meek, put upon girl. So I don't know, it just felt off. It just felt indicative of the uneven tone of the film. It also kind of suffers from not knowing when to end. I mean, you have a false ending and then you have the real ending, which feels overly protracted. It's certainly not terribly made or anything. I mean, it's got good acting, good cinematography, pacing, effects, all that stuff is good. But I don't know, I was more or less distracted for most of it and only entertained in spots. I just thought the pacing was off, and I thought, the tone was uneven, and I was just a little underwhelmed, if I'm honest. So I don't really recommend it personally, but I can see how this would be like a harmless crowd pleaser. But that's my thoughts on the film.
Nathan.
Well, this is going to come as a huge shock to all of you, I'm sure, but I loved it. I thought it was just so much fun, and I love the little twist on the slasher kind of cliches. I love the idea that when they're trying to escape from the cops, the car won't start. But the cops are after them because, of course, she is in the body. She is in the body of the butcher. So they're trying to catch and arrest, and I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a fun sequence. I love the scene where they're trying to get away from the butcher, and he's just trying to explain that it's Millie. I thought that was a lot of fun. That sequence was. I agree with Joseph that I think the actress that played Millie, especially when she's like you said, playing host to the butcher, I think she was phenomenal. She did such a good job at two totally different characters. I love the opening sequence because it was just sort of like a mini slasher movie. It's got kills, fun chase scene, a little cat and mouse. I thought that was a lot of fun too. So that was a great moment. The little slasher scenes in the beginning. And yeah, overall, I just had a lot of fun with it. I mean, it was very fun. It was fast paced for me. I love all the little in jokes. I love that the vodka that the mom drinks is called Swan Song. So, I mean, it's very tongue in cheek like that throughout the whole movie. But it's it's very I don't know. It's very much a crowd pleaser, like Justin had said to us. Very much so. So yeah, was a huge fan of it. I thought it was hilarious when she was trying to get away from the butcher, Millie, and she's wearing this gigantic mascot costume.
Yeah, she dressed as a beaver.
But anyway, no, it was a fun movie. I liked it a lot.
What did you think, Justin?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun. There's a couple of things sort of jumped out at me. I just wondered whether or not the director has a passion for making kind of slasher movies with a twist, or he's got pigeonholed and it's the only one you could make. I don't know. He did a great job with it, I thought, because originally I think it was the high concept, I think it was originally called Freaky Friday 13th, and I know they you mentioned about the typeface when they say Thursday the 11th or whatever, and it's in the Friday 13th typeface. So whether or not they were hit with a lawsuit or whatever happened, I don't know, because I know Blumhouse were keen on taking over the Friday 13th franchise at one point, to actually get it moving, because they could probably at least produce some movies, unlike Paramount or New Line. So once the legal battles are out the way, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it did. I would like to see one day to see you have. It didn't quite ring true. You've got this young, woman who's clearly kind of plain Jane super brain until she takes the glasses off, and then she's kind of stunning. There's suffered a little bit from the Carrie, is it Chloe Grace Moretz in the Carrie remake, who's supposed to be this kind of dowdy character who just has a spiral perm and becomes this supermodel. So it had suffered from that a little bit, but overall it was, I thought it was a lot of fun. I can see where Joseph's coming from about the Vince Vaughn playing the high school girl as a bit cliche as this high school girl, but overall I thought it worked really well. it was like a fun romp of a slash movie. So I haven't seen Happy Death Day. I didn't so much like the sequel to Happy Death Day because I think it kind of was a little bit went a bit too far away from the slash movie. But
wait a minute, you saw the sequel, but you didn't see the original?
No, I did see the original, but I haven't seen the original for ages. I meant to say, but I saw the sequel, and so I probably prefer Freaky to the sequel, Happy to Happy Death Day. But I didn't think one point of a contention though, Nathan, that wasn't vodka, was it? I thought she was drinking cheap Chardonnay.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I was paying attention to the label, the Swan Song label.
Yeah. Well, no, I just thought it was kind of funny that she'd just drunk a single bottle, maybe over a couple of days, and her daughter looked in the bin and gave her a disapproving look.
I know. What would she think of you, Justin?
Yeah, and she was passed out on the couch like it was a regular occurrence. Like she can't even handle a bottle of wine.
Well, I was thinking, they saw my recycling box. So anyway, anyway, that is again, it was one of the few films that I think it was number one at the box office, wasn't it, in the States?
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have any competition.
Yeah, I know. It was 6 people go to see it, and it's number one. Yeah. I'd say. Yeah.
So, well, that was freaky. And Erik, was there anything else?
No, I'll chime in on the other one when with my one sentence review.
So, Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, so I watched this movie called The Stalker. I think we've all seen this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so for me, The Stalker is a movie you kind of have to spoil, so we will. But if you'd like to skip ahead, here's how.
Please skip ahead 7 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay, so I certainly don't want to harp too much on the creative team behind The Stalker, as I too have made a low-budget stinker, and believe me, mine is worse. But this movie is... it's an utter failure at doing what it sets out to do. Essentially, what I got from it was comparisons to The Room in a sheer lunacy. You have the victims of this stalker. They not once but twice they dump a dead body for no reason whatsoever. When the simplest solution to their problem both times is to call the cops. The first time it doesn't even become a subplot. It just happens, and then it's swept under the rug. And I'm like, what? And I love how the identity of the stalker or the killer, whatever you want to call him, it revolves around this this opening scene where this one character goes out of his way with some of the most contrived dialogue you'll ever hear, just to make sure that the POV shot that he's speaking to. Because this is the stalker, obviously, and if he says anything, we'll suss out his identity later on if we hear his voice. But yeah, he goes out of his way to say things like, I don't even want you to talk right now. That's how mad I am at you. It's just so silly, and it's a whodunit, but surely you know what I will follow that up with, that the title character, the stalker, he's introduced very, very late in the film, and he has about like 1 microsecond of screen time, and then he's later revealed to be the stalker. So that whole opening scene was just, silly, more to pile onto it. I mean, this movie's just all over the place. The acting across the board is abominable. Perhaps not up to Tommy Wiseau's standards, but man, I thought the husband character, I mean, I can't even really give a plot. It's basically this one guy fires someone, and then him and his family start being stalked. I mean, that's the plot. That's all there is to it. But the actor playing the husband, his character came pretty close to some Tommy Wiseau levels from time to time. But as for The Stalker, the movie, I don't think this would appeal to everyone, and certainly it feels more like kind of like a crowd movie, destined for something like Riff Tracks. But I enjoyed this one immensely. I mean, it's only an hour long, and I howled with laughter through the whole thing. If you're in for that kind of point and laugh at something, and I don't think that's what they were going for here. But if nothing else, I think the team behind this film should embrace that. Erik, I know you weren't too plus, so your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of The Room, but this one just did nothing for me. I know it's only an hour, but even in a sort of point and laugh fashion, it didn't do anything for me, I'm afraid. I was just painfully bored by it. I mean, for me, the joy of The Room is probably in the dialogue, the script, and this didn't have that sort of... I know you mentioned that sort of the exposition at the start with the guy doing the firing, but apart from that, it didn't have that sort of lunatic dialogue, that permeates the room, or Tommy Wiseau and his strange accent and weird acting. I didn't think the acting was abysmal in this. I thought it was just par for the course. I mean, I'm not really one for these DIY homemade, put it up on YouTube type horror films. They just don't do a lot for me. I'm more at home with a sort of a big budgety movie like Freaky. So yeah, it didn't do anything for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I didn't think it would. What about you, Justin?
I saw this. It was on Amazon Prime, so I don't know if you've already mentioned that. That's kind of where I saw it anyway. It's barely over an hour, isn't it? I think, but it's a strange little movie because it's like there's bits in it. You just think like anyone writing this or making this would have thought, the first murder is, I think, with the wife she shoots dead, who we never find out who she shoots dead, do we? She thinks it's her ex-husband or whoever, somebody coming to get her, and she shoots dead a random.
She thinks it's a stalker, and it's like some random guy just walking through their yard or something.
Yeah, or a neighbour coming. Maybe it's like Dottie Hinkle or something. But it was or Rosemary. But it just shoots them dead, and then then there's nothing ever said about it. They doesn't seem particularly worried about it, apart from going and burying this body in the woods. So they're dreadful people anyway. And then you've got this kind of strange subplot with this guy who seems to be completely besotted by this kind of rather homely looking lead character who is thinking she's the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And then he just kind of follows her around and goes around, tries to really a real creep of a character. It's just, it's very strange. And then the ending with that whole setup with the explanation of why the killer's doing what he's doing, and it makes no sense whatsoever. So it's a very straight, it's kind of almost like, it feels like someone's made it. It's like a weird meta film where they've done it as in like, it's almost like an art house piece because it doesn't make any sense. And it's bizarrely po-faced, but inherently ridiculous. So I had a bit more fun with it than Erik did, but it's thankfully they didn't make it like 2 hours long. So it's a snappy hour. It might feel like 2 hours, but it's on Amazon Prime if you want to inflict it on yourself.
Yeah, small miracles for being just an hour. Nathan, what did you think of this stupid film?
Well, I did feel like it was about 3 hours long when I was watching it, but I mean, it's got some really funny points. I love that the cast plays it very straight, like they are very sincerely, trying to, make like a mystery kind of thriller film, but I mean, it just doesn't work. I mean, it's it's got so many ridiculous moments in it, and when they get visited by the cop, I mean, it's just so ridiculous, the dialogue. I mean, it's got like some great moments in it with, like hilariously over the top dialogue, which I really liked. I felt that a lot of the moves that the family made didn't make any sense, but I mean, we already kind of brought that up. Overall, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, I recommend it. Just know what you're in for is what I would say. Know what to expect before you actually watch it.
Yeah, and I think if you just go in it like that, knowing that it's only an hour, and you're in the mood to chuckle, I think you might get something out of it. But yeah, other than Freaky and this, that's all I've watched this week, Justin.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. I've got a couple of ones I'll run through quickly. One was Smiley Face Killers, which it piqued my interest because it was written by Bret Easton Ellis and directed by the director of River's Edge and an episode of Beverly Hills 90210. So the other reason it kind of piqued my interest was that I had a kind of passing interest or not. I'd heard about these, the rumor of the kind of trooper serial killers that are supposed to be going around killing young men and leaving their bodies in water and leaving smiley faced graffiti nearby. And it's supposed to be this kind of rash of killings, which may or may not be by this kind of group of serial killers, although it's been largely disproved now. So, but this kind of film takes this kind of slight. It's a very strange film. It takes this kind of sort of true crime-ish thing in so much it starts with all this is like September 22nd, 2017 or whatever, and it starts with this kind of very 70s looking one of those kind of vans that you see with serial killers driving around in them, or where they the door will suddenly swing open and they'll pull off some young man into it.
Justin, pull off some young man.
And then it basically centers on this this one college student who is having some kind of mental health breakdown or is off his meds, and he starts to think that maybe he's going to be the next victim. And it turns out he's right, although all his friends just think he's gone crazy. So, but it starts off in it's very strange. It kind of tempo to it. It feels almost like It Follows in some ways, almost like his art house movie feel to it, and it's quite stilted and odd, and it's got an 80s vibe to it and things. And then in the last third of it, it goes into this full on slasher movie chase sequence where this main character who's played by Ronan Rubinstein, who the director obviously clearly fancied because he's naked for not most of the movie, but he's shown having a shower, changing his top, basically walking around topless most of the time. And in the last third of the movie, he's running around completely naked apart from his genitals covered with some tape, being chased by a trio of serial killers, including Crispin Glover, who looks like Cropsey from The Burning. And it's all wrapped up in this kind of weird mythology about water and the serial killers and things. So it's a crazy little movie. Not to everyone's taste, but I thought it was kind of quite hypnotic the first 2/3, and then the last third it goes into this completely off the wall kind of 80s horror slasher chase thing with extra dollop of weirdness. So any of you guys managed to catch that yet? No.
Not yet, but you were talking about it through Facebook Messenger, and it sounded really great, so I do plan to watch it.
Yeah, I think it's probably an acquired taste, but
kind of like The Stalker.
Yes, exactly. And the only other one I'd cover very quickly was Run with Sarah Paulson, who was another new movie which has been getting quite a lot of good notices. So I checked that out, and it's basically kind of I won't spoil it, but the story is basically centers around like a teenage girl who's got various health issues and problems, taking lots of medication, and she lives with her mother, played by Sarah Paulson, and she slowly starts suspecting that her mother is maybe had like some kind of Munchausen by proxy or something, that she's not actually ill at all, but she's being made ill by her mother, and it goes. So it kind of hints at what all these different things of reasons why that could be. It went in a direction I wasn't expecting, so I thought it was going to go in a completely different direction. But yeah, that was quite good fun. Sarah Paulson's always worth a watch. So yeah, that was an entertaining little movie. And again, is that one any of you guys have seen?
No.
Never heard of it.
Well, talking of entertaining movies, well, maybe not. Let's see. Too Scared to Scream is coming up after this.
Next, a killer is loose in an apartment complex, and he's looking for more than a cup of sugar. Mike Connor stars in this thriller that'll leave you too scared to scream.
Mike Connors plays Detective Donardo, a New York detective investigating a series of ghastly murders of various residents in a high-rise apartment complex. With some suspicion pointing to the strange doorman, Donardo recruits police rookie Kate to lure the killer into the open. I probably should have read that first, but that was the very badly written short synopsis from IMDb. And I butchered that. But anyway, just in the way as the killer butchers his victims in this Too Scared to Scream. This is a strange movie I saw many years ago. It's one of the movies that I think I picked up in New York when I was there in late 90s or maybe 2000, when I did the trawl of the video shops and picked up loads and loads of tapes, and this was one of them, I think. And if you're familiar with it, it's got the cracked or the kind of broken kind of plaster mask of this kind of looks like a typical slasher movie killer mask on the cover, which kind of, when I saw it first, I was thinking, wow, this is going to be, I knew it was a slasher movie, so I thought we're going to get a masked killer stalking people in a high-rise apartment. And when I saw it, I was very disappointed, in so much that you don't get that. You don't get, you do get slasher murders, and there is a killer stalking people in a high-rise apartment, but you certainly don't get a masked killer. So this is a very strange movie that was made to be to cash in on the Friday 13th films and the films of the time, which we'll get more into when we talk about the background. But it's made by people who were slightly out of step with it. They kind of wanted a bit of a slice of the kind of teen slasher market. But I can't imagine what any teenage audience sitting down to watch Too Scared to Scream some years after it was made, because it was made in late 1982 and didn't get a release until late 84 and early 1985. It starts with a theme song sung by Charles Aznavour, of all people, which kind of really seems to, I can't imagine many people sitting there in their Dee Dee Boppers and leg warmers in 1985 would have been particularly enthralled by Charles Aznavour at that point. So it revolves around Mike Connors, who's the actor who was famously was Mannix, who it's a kind of TV show which I'm not sure if we got in the UK. I don't remember it growing up, but it was obviously very popular in the United States. And he plays a police lieutenant in this who's charged to investigate a series of murders. And you've got Ian McShane, who is the doorman, and the original title of the film was The Doorman, who is this very strange character who kind of quotes Shakespeare and various. He just seems to be off with the fairies and a bit odd, but quite charming with the residents. And the people turn up dead by a knife-wielding killer who kind of likes shoving people in cupboards and washing machines and various places. So he's also joined by a rookie cop played by Anne Archer, who he keeps on calling Kid throughout this, even though she was 35 when she made this, which seems very strange. And so she goes undercover in the apartment to try and lure out the killer. And some of my favourite sequences in this are some of the things where she does bizarre keep fit routine once in the park. And she seems to be, most of her routine, keep fit routine, seems to be stretching her arms and pouting and gyrating her hips. And even though she's supposed to be this kind of this cop, there's a couple of scenes that made me laugh out loud. One was where she goes undercover to follow the doorman playing a homeless person in a prosthetic nose, which I thought was probably a bit, might be a bit much for a police undercover. I don't know if they really went for prosthetic kind of big noses. And the other, when she gets attacked by the killer, runs around the apartment, bopping everyone she can find over the head with a phone receiver, which seems a bit strange considering she's supposed to be this kind of seasoned police officer. But anyway, it's a very strange movie that, for me, it kind of, it's not a great movie by any stretch, but it feels like it was made slightly tongue-in-cheek with loads of chock full of cameos from stars of yore. So I enjoy it because I think it's a slice of kind of weird and slice of early 80s strangeness, and has enough slasher movie stuff going on it to certainly include here. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. So Erik, do you want to go first?
Yep. Well, this was a first-time viewing for me for Too Scared to Scream. It had been on my radar for a long time because, as you said, that VHS cover artwork was really quite alluring. As you mentioned, sadly, that mask doesn't make an appearance, but I really enjoyed the film. I didn't know what to expect at all. All I knew was that Anne Archer did a funny dance in the film, and that was enough to draw me in. So this is probably belongs to that slightly higher budgeted. Well, it looks like it's a higher budgeted film where it's kind of a police based slasher movies. Now, often I find them less engaging than Teens in the Woods being stalked by a mass killer type ones. But I did really enjoy this. As you said, I think Anne Archer for me is the most interesting character in it. Possibly because she just does all the stupid things, like she dances in her leotard in the hotel room, and she has that, as you said, the unnecessary prosthetic nose. Like when she first appears, I'm like, Anne Archer looks weird in this, and then she takes off, her nose. I'm like, oh, that's why. And as you said, I mean, I'm sure the doorman has no idea who she is anyway, so she probably doesn't need to go into that much of a disguise to go undercover. As you said, there's kind of an odd feel to the film. I mean, Murray Hamilton, as you said, appears in one stage as the first victim's ex-husband, and he has nothing really to do with the plot. He's just basically is visited and told his ex-wife has died, and that's kind of him gone from the film. I suppose maybe setting him up as a red herring for later. I'm not sure what the idea behind him being there was. And then poor Maureen O'Sullivan as the catatonic lady who has been shot with Homer Simpson's makeup gun, just sitting there basically. She doesn't even have to move or speak. She doesn't have to act, really. I mean, it's one of the easiest paychecks I'm sure she ever got in her life. I love there's a weird scene with Carrie Nye as this fashion designer who has these models on parade, but they all seem to double as prostitutes as well. I couldn't really understand what was going on in that particular moment. Is she running a brothel? Is she running a fashion house? I wasn't quite sure. It also that leads to the one bit of eye candy in the film. I think we can all agree with that big fat hairy man in the sauna. I know, Justin, you're particularly fond of that sequence. You dirty bugger.
I had to take my hands behind my back when I was watching that.
Yeah, I'd say you did. As for the death scenes, again, it's one of those slasher films where you see the aftermath, you don't actually see the action. So it's not a Tom Savini or KNB type slasher movie showcase in that way. I mean, I suppose the film does maybe drag in places like a lot of those police investigation slasher movies do at the time. But I thought it reminded me very much of Terror Eyes, or what's the Night School, sorry, which kind of had the same type of approach to it. I thought it was really enjoyable, kept bubbling along nicely. I loved the ludicrous ending, which I didn't see coming. I'm sure you guys probably did spot who the killer was from the out. I mean, I wasn't really thinking throughout the film, who is the killer? I wonder who the killer is. I just sort of let it wash over me, and then when the reveal comes at the end, I'm like, oh, that's pretty out there. So yeah, it borrows heavily from Psycho, obviously, but also a little bit from Scooby-Doo, which is no bad thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed Too Scared to Scream. I just don't understand why it's taking me so long to see it.
Well, did you know that there's a little bit of background, but the writers of this also wrote for Scooby-Doo?
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yes, it was Neil Barbera and Glenn Leopold who wrote the script for The Prowler the year before this was filmed, but they also mostly did TV, so did like Banana Splits and Scooby-Doo, which may explain some things.
Oh, that does explain a lot.
So, well, thank you, Erik. Joseph, this wasn't your first time, was it, at the rodeo?
No, and I think we've all kind of lamented that a lot of times we get bored with the police investigative angle, and certainly in a giallo, and when they shoehorn it into a slasher film, I get a little more bored because I like slashers more, but there is a lot of that here. But for once, I like the police characters enough that hey, I didn't mind watching them piece together the mystery. Of course, we figure it out long before they do, but Too Scared to Scream doesn't necessarily get by on clever plotting. Rather, for me, it has 1982 written all over it. And watching this, I started to feel like maybe 1982 just might be my favorite year of the slasher film. I mean, what you essentially have here, fashion-wise at least, is this kind of slow changing of the guards from kind of beige disco blouses and lavish bell-bottoms to this sort of in-between style of light grays. Still some beige, and but once in a blue moon, you have someone like Anne Archer dancing in purple leggings to a bit of a synthy, funky jazz. I mean, it's that color palette between lifeless late 70s and the bodacious late 80s that really just appeals to me. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely loved Too Scared to Scream, which incidentally is a movie I used to hate. But this time around, I was kind of lost in that New York atmosphere from 1982. It kind of swerves from the skeezier side of the tracks into, lavish Broadway lights and then back again. and you get the traffic in the city at this kind of loud roar, and it all underpins this really rather ridiculous plot boiler inside of this luxurious quote unquote high rise where these working girls are getting murdered, and one of the detectives on the case makes her trade doing decoy work. That's Ann Archer. So yeah, she'll soon be undercover inside one of the victims' apartments, dancing up a purple streak, hoping to lure the really rather obvious culprit behind the whodunit into a trap. It's permeated with a lot of memorable characters. I mean, you have Ian McShane as Vincent, and he's really good in this as this guy who's obviously struggling with his own sexuality around these women, and then he's also on the other hand dealing with this invalid wheelchair-bound mother character. But some of the minor characters struck a real chord. I mean, Justin played in that dialogue Mamie, the sassy black woman who goes to clean the apartment, and then she finds the victim inside of a clothes dryer. And it's very My Bloody Valentine. And Too Scared to Scream, while it's permeated with that police investigative angle, I think it has more than enough cheesy moments like that. It has a lot of good chase scenes, some ample nudity, both male and female. And it's just it's got a plain ridiculous mystery plot to offset, the time that they spend with the cops piecing it all together. But hey, Ann Archer is one of those cops, and she's just terrific. Mike Connors is no slouch either. I enjoyed both characters. So a thumbs way up for me, Justin. I love this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I love the atmosphere. I love the pacing. I love the psycho inside of a confined space in this inside of a very big building, but yet it feels kind of claustrophobic in its own way. So yeah, thumbs way up. A very underrated film. I'm glad you chose this one.
Thank you, Joseph. What about you, Nathan?
Well, I first saw Too Scared to Scream when I was a kid, and sort of like you guys were saying, like I was expecting like a murderer wearing that scary mask on the cover. So when I saw it as a kid, I was very disappointed because that mask is not even in the movie at all. And it is more, or it does feature more police procedural stuff than what I prefer. But sort of like, Joe was saying, I had so much fun with it regardless. I think that it was just a lot of fun. And I actually think some of the kill scenes were well done. The first kill actually kind of made me jump because, you just don't know when it's going to happen. Something awful is about to happen, but you don't know when. I thought, and I did not guess who the killer was. So I'm with Erik on that one. I did not figure it out, which is like in hindsight, I don't know how I didn't figure it out, but that's always the way it is. I love the scene where Ann Archer's dancing, of course, but I also love like towards the end when the killer, or she's at the top of the stairs and the killer pushes the wheelchair at her, and she has more than enough time to like stop this wheelchair, and it just hits her and totally knocks her all the way down the stairs. It's so clumsily done, but I love it. And that's the kind of stuff that I love in these movies. The killer's motive is absolutely absurd. It's completely ridiculous. But also I felt that the ending seemed very rushed. Like, the killer shows up and, it gives their motivation, and like, there's like just a quick, final battle. And I don't know, it just goes off like very fast to me, but no, it's definitely a lot of fun. I think if, people watch it, basically knowing what to expect. I think that there is just a lot of entertainment here. It's a lot of fun to watch. So yes, it's a really good pick. I love it way more now than I did when I was a kid. But like I said, when I was a kid, I just feel like I was expecting more of a Friday the 13th in a high-rise apartment building or something. And it's not like that at all. But it does have a lot of kills. Although I didn't think there was many people in this movie that were too scared to scream. There was a lot of screaming in this movie. So, there's that. I guess, are we going to spoil the ending?
Yes.
We always do.
We always do. So if you haven't seen Too Scared to Scream, then skip ahead a couple of minutes or 5 minutes or so, and then come back when you have watched it. But was the because one of the things that Mike Connors boasted about the stuff that I've seen, because there was a lot of interviews with him at the time about him being producing for the first time, because he produced this as well as acted in it, and it was a kind of a big deal at the time. One of the boasts that he made was that no one saw who the killer was. No one saw it coming. It's the couple of, before we just spoil that, things that I took away from the thing, that I did wonder that if the people who wrote it or the director had seen some Pete Walker movies, because I don't know if you've seen The Confessional Murders. There's the old lady there's an old lady in that who can't speak and is kind of bedbound, is the killer's mother, and it seemed to be almost like a hint at that. So it's a similar thing with the Maureen O'Sullivan's character, who actually, in retrospect, there was no real reason for her to be acting weird, was there, in this? But the other thing that reminded me of, only seen the one with The Comeback, which is the one with the killer with the scythe and the hag mask running down the stairs, sort of chasing a character, and there's a scene very much like that at the end of this when it reveals who the killer is, also in drag. So, but Nathan, did you want to do the honors about who the killer is?
Yes, the killer is Edward, who is is he the day doorman? He's a doorman in that building. His motive is basically he's in love with the other doorman, the night doorman, Vincent. He is in love with him, and he's also crazy because he felt that all these women were taking the attention off of him and stuff. So they had to die so he could be with Vincent, which is probably not a good way to get him on your side, but he tried it anyway.
One question I had was when he's revealing his motive, he says we all acted together on stage. So did Vincent know him, or did he just not remember him? I didn't really get that.
Yeah, they knew each other. I thought that they had a fling. The vibe that I got is they had a fling, and Vincent was rejecting him now.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got as well.
I mean, that's kind of what I got, but just the way he says that, I was just like, wait a minute. I mean, for me, wouldn't Vincent just kind of feel awkward saying, okay, yeah, I'll get you a job, even though, we're broken up? I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
Well, it's also a bit weird with like the whole idea of Vincent. His mother lives in this penthouse apartment off Central Park, and Mike Connor's character says to him, "Why on earth do you work as a doorman when you've got basically your mother lives in luxury and you don't need to work?" And he just says, "Oh, I'd like to be a servant to the people," which doesn't make any sense. But he's also, there was a whole backstory, wasn't there, that his mother had been in a car accident with him, and she'd lost the use of her legs, and also her ability to put on makeup. And so it was, so there was a whole thing that it was suggested that he'd gone a bit doolally because he'd caused his mother's accident. But also didn't make any real sense why in the clip I played when he's talking to Mammy when she comes in and berates him, and he's slacking off Vincent, isn't he, to this cleaner, saying, everyone loves him. I don't know why.
I thought he was all these women love him, but he's really standoffish. If when he's on the scenes, like he's got that one woman who calls him all the time. She obviously wants to invite him up to her apartment.
Mrs. Horny or something.
Yeah.
What's her name?
That's literally her name. But she keeps inviting him up, and he'll hang up on her mid sentence, and then any other woman that comes by, he just kind of he's kind of aloof. That's just what I picked up on anyway. So I didn't find his character all that likable. I mean, I liked him in the movie, I thought, but he wasn't as likable as the ladies were making him out to be.
Mrs. Hornaday was the Hornaday, which is what Justin's daily diet is.
Yeah.
Well, it was clearly he didn't want to go and sample her pie. Did he? She kept on inviting him up, but he said no. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of the. It's almost, I wonder if this influenced what's the one? Hide and Go Shriek, because it had a similar kind of ending, didn't it, with a similar motive.
I tell you, it's over. Then you kill people, Zach.
Yeah. But it's a strange kind of movie. It's almost like I've kind of wrote down, it's like a cheap rent Inferno, Dario Argento, but like it was made through like a TV.
Yeah, but Inferno didn't have a man tied up with cigarette burns on his bottom.
No, that's true. That is true. But it had this weird. It started off. It felt very much like a TV movie, or TV show rather than a movie, until the boobs came out, and there was a lot of boobage throughout it, wasn't it? So it was it had this it just felt very odd the way the whole thing didn't really gel together as a cohesive whole, but it worked. It's still a fun movie. Like you say, like having Charles Aznavour singing the theme tune at the beginning. Then you had all these kind of fun cameos, and as we'll learn later, a lot of the reasons why those came together. And Anne Archer basically playing the kind of comic relief in it. It was a weird mishmash that shouldn't really work, but it kind of works on its own terms.
Yeah, it's like an alternate reality kind of. It works in like its own alternate reality almost.
Yeah, the alternate reality where Anne Archer is holding this guy at gunpoint, and he barely, and I mean barely, kicks her leg, and her whole entire body goes flying.
I love that bitch. She goes flying back into some garbage bags.
It was so funny because I'm like, yeah, he could have knocked the gun out of her hand maybe, but he kicks her hand, and then her whole body just seems to go flying.
Did you like? I already mentioned it, but the fact that she's this undercover cop, and she kind of goes into complete blind panic mode and like bashes another cop over the head with that telephone receiver.
I know, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's like when they're chasing that dude in the alley, she's all like strong and forthright, but when she's confronted with the killer and his drag, she just completely falls to pieces.
Well, she's strong and forthright until he gently taps her hand with his foot.
Yeah.
And then she goes flying backwards.
Yeah.
And what's funny is like this is right after her partner compliments her for doing such a good job, and then the very next scene is her getting lightly kicked and flying.
Well, she kind of runs around the apartment like sort of screaming like sort of Beaker and the Muppets and leg warmers, isn't she? She goes completely from being this competent policewoman to being this kind of the kind of not final girl, but like a damsel in distress. It's very strange the way they did that. But should we go on to some background?
Sure.
So who would like to go first? Nathan, what have you got for us?
Nathan would.
No.
Oh, Nathan. What about you, Joseph?
Yeah, I have quite a lot here, so bear with me here. In lieu of a wide theatrical release, I'm pretty sure it got some theatrical release. Too Scared to Scream was released on VHS via the Vestron video label in 1985, and the standard slipcover. The catalog number was 5061. Suggested retail price as of 1986 was $79.95, which adjusted for 2020 inflation would be $189.95. Yeah, typically that's what the video shops would pay the distributors to rent out the film to customers. Now, as I try to avoid the IMDb for facts, I went searching elsewhere, and according to the 1995 publication Movie Marvels, Film Facts You'll Flip For, Too Scared to Scream is corroborated to have had something of a theatrical release anyway. I'm thinking it was that limited run in 1984 when they first opened before it went to video, but in that book, it says, when Too Scared to Scream opened in Hollywood, a contest was held on the sidewalk outside the theater to find the girl whose scream was the loudest and scariest. In the book, there were no citations or no mention if this is the same film, so I did check the IMDb, and sure enough, it corroborates this contest and further states that there were 100 contestants, and they were all judged by star Mike Connors. So I thought that was pretty cool. The IMDb also stated that it had a 1984 release date in Alabama, of all places. So who knows if that's true. But there's certainly more about the theatrical release in Fangoria number 43 from 1985. There's a fascinating article that acts as sort of a bio for Mike Connors and a promo for Too Scared to Scream. And it says, I won't read it all, but I'll read the preface and a few bits here and there. It says, quote unquote, while establishing himself as a leading man in the 50s, Mike Connors was a part of the freewheeling, low-budget operations of AIP, where young producers, directors, and actors took chances to start filmmaking careers. Connors himself, then known as Touch Connors, got into the swing of things at the new studio by helping to raise money for and getting a producer's credit on a Western called Flesh and the Spur. Now, almost 30 years later, Connors' urge to produce, which had been quote-unquote gnawing at the back of my head for some time, has reemerged, inspiring the actor to both produce and star in the current murder thriller Too Scared to Scream. And then it just goes on to say, reading some of the best bits here, Connors' ambition to produce first started to take concrete shape when actor friend Tony LoBianco showed him a script that LoBianco wanted to direct. That was Too Scared to Scream, known as The Doorman at the time. The screenplay for Too Scared to Scream impressed Connors as an interesting commercial mystery thriller. Connors was saying, it was kind of a bizarre story, and I was completely shocked at the end as to who the killer was. I thought that with the proper casting, it would be an offbeat thriller that would give us a chance to tease the audience in an exciting way. Tony had the same feeling. Our idea was to lead the audience down the various paths, and when they expected something to happen, it wouldn't happen. And when they didn't expect something, it would happen. Kind of the old Hitchcock formula. If you have somebody standing behind a door and the hero is going through the doorway, the audience is convinced he's going to get shot or hit on the head. And I think that does happen here, actually, but he says it doesn't happen. And then when you least expect it, he gets hit. That's the type of thing we try to do rather than knock them out of their seats with pure gore and heads flying off and all. We tried to stress the thriller rhythm, quote unquote. A little bit more from the article. It says, another piece fell into place when Connors showed the script to his friend Ken Norris. Formerly president of Norris Industries, Norris was getting bored since selling his company and was interested in trying the movie business, both as an investor and as an actor. When Connors assured him that Too Scared to Scream could be made on a reasonable budget, he agreed to put money into the picture and went on to play a supporting character. And then it says, once all the talent was lined up, the time came to prepare the New York City location for the shoot. And so after 3 weeks of scouting, a Manhattan apartment building was found that met all the requirements and would facilitate the majority of the picture's shooting. The crew went in on a Friday and worked overtime through the weekend to prepare the building for the start of production on Wednesday. And on Monday morning, Connors got a call from the owner of the building, who suddenly decided not to allow the film to be shot on the property. So Connors and his production team rushed over to the owner's office to plead with him to change his mind. They were told that the owner wouldn't see them. Connors and company were left in desperate straits. It was only 2 days before shooting was to begin, and they had no place to film. Connors had said, quote unquote, a few of the owner's secretaries asked me for autographs. There was one pretty young lady standing there, and she said, sure, sorry about this. I felt, well, she's just one of the girls working here. And I said, thank you, but it's really his problem. We left there not knowing what to do, quote unquote. The next day, Connors' crew was scurrying about trying to find a replacement location when a call came through saying that the owner would see Mr. Connors alone. So Mike jumped into a cab, hurried back over to the guy's office to find the same pretty young woman again, and she turned out to be one of the owner's lawyers. Connors says, I asked what happened, and then she said, well, last night I felt so badly I told him that I thought he should reconsider. Quote unquote. So when the owner found out that it was the actor from Mannix that was producing the picture, it turned out he was a big fan of the show. So Connors went back in to see him, and he said, the owner said, this is your first producing job, right? And then Mike Connors said, yeah, you can either make us or break us on this picture. And then the guy said, yeah, well, I guess if old Joe Mannix is running the show, the picture can't be too bad. Okay, you can have the apartment, quote unquote. Production inside the apartment complex went relatively smoothly, though Connors did go on to say that some of the tenants claimed various violations with regards to the shoot, and there was a dentist's office in one of the lower floors, and the dentist apparently thought his patients may be in danger because of the shoot. Didn't say why. It does mention prep for a theatrical release, but it's not date specific. I do know it played on HBO in February of 1986, just after its release. And I do have a bumper. I'll play that for you. It's a neat little HBO bumper. And there's various other bits in the article, but those the ones I read are some of the best. That's all the background I seem to have on Too Scared to Scream, Justin.
Well, I've got a few bits to add. I mean, one of the things they called in, the budget I think was about 1.5 million, and Mike Connors said that if he had another 500,000, he could have made a better movie. But they did call in like favors with. So there's cameos. Probably quite a few people that modern audiences wouldn't necessarily recognise today, but I think you mentioned Murray Hamilton, Erik, who most people would know as the mayor in Jaws. So he's the cameo, and there's also is it John Hurt? Is it John Hurt? Is a mortician or or a kind of forensic pathologist or somebody.
Yeah, he was the dad in the Home Alone films.
The eccentric lady with the pie was Ruth Ford, who was I looked up hers, and she was in a film with a title that I'm sure we can all relate to from 1938, was Too Much Johnson.
There's a double entendre.
Well, indeed. And Carrie Nye played Grisella, who may or may not have given RuPaul the catchline and "Don't fuck it up." Was also in Creepshow in 1982. Mike Connors says, as I mentioned, he was. He got his start in a fantastic noir film, Sudden Fear, with Joan Crawford in 1952, set in San Francisco. If you've not seen that, it's definitely worth a watch. But at risk of repeating some of the things you might have said, Joseph, I'll try not to. But I think you mentioned it was originally called The Doorman, and it was written by the writing pair that had previously written The Prowler that came out in 1981, aka Rosemary's Killer. What else have we got here? Production started in 1982, and I think I saw a discussion online. Maybe it was talking about a lot. You see kind of new. Sort of Times Square or kind of New York with lots of kind of the porno films in the background, which very much of its time, with films like Nightmares and Damaged Brain and The Howling and all those kind of films that use Times Square and that kind of seedy glamour, dogged glamour of Times Square as a backdrop, and they obviously use that in this. What else have we got? Connors said at the time that films were made aimed at like a teenage audience or an adult audience, and he wanted to offer something to both. And he was at the time he was very much trying to avoid being typecast as a detective, and he said it was ironic that he ended up as a police detective in this. But he thought a murder mystery would be an easy sell. He actually really wanted to do a comedy. And interestingly, you mentioned, Joseph, about Ken Norris, his friend, who was his neighbour, who put up the money for the film. I feel like it kind of feels like it's almost like a skit made with like friends having fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned like he wanted to make a comedy. There's a lot of intentionally humorous bits in this film where they kind of like do pratfall type humor.
Yeah, and he said he told the Journal Herald in 1985 that it was conceived during a time a lot of those Friday the 13th type things were making a big splash at the box office, so we weren't adverse to picking up some of that audience. But he also said it wasn't a horror movie as such. He called in favours for cameos by well-known actors and actresses, as we mentioned. The film was completed very quickly. In fact, just 3 months after Mike Connors showed Norris the script, they'd filmed it. So it was already filmed in the bag after 3 months after they'd done that. And they had to move extra quickly because director Tony Bianco was locked into a role on Broadway. He was also an actor. So I think you mentioned, Nathan, about how it was it seemed very rushed, and that may explain why. What else? The film it was filmed on schedule, so filmed very quickly. I think Mike Connors at the time, he wanted to get put out by a major studio, so he was turned down for distribution by Columbia Pictures, who put out Happy Birthday to Me, and also Frank Yablins, who was working at MGM at the time, turned them down as well. He also said that the film had a massive delay. I saw quite him saying it's because the people doing the music were working in Europe, which seemed a bit strange. I don't know if that was Charles Aznavour he was waiting on, but it had its premiere in Las Vegas in September 1984, but Connors missed it because he was committed to doing dinner theatre that night. It was then released into Southern California, as you mentioned, and apparently did quite well. After test screenings by a company called The Movie Store, who had previously just had been sold rights for films to video. But it was a disappointment. It wasn't picked up by a major, so it was released on a city-to-city basis. One interesting little tidbit was I found that its one release was nixed in late 1984 because of the controversy around the release of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which of course caused such a huge controversy at the time by groups like including Citizens Against Movie Madness, which is very John Waters polyester, but is that they couldn't buy broadcast advertising for Too Scared to Scream because of the controversy. No TV station or radio station would touch a horror movie wherever that was, maybe it's some California, because of the controversy over Silent Night, Deadly Night. And the last little bits I just got, there were a few reviews when it was released in Southern California, and LA Weekly said in February 1985, it's pretty bad as a movie, but great as an episode of Mannix with extraneous nudity and profanity thrown in to let you know you're not watching TV. But it also praised quirky performances and funny dialogue. The LA Times said that Lo Bianco plays up the Halloween subjective camera, but said it suggested a restoration comedy sunk in sleaze, and that they suspected he was making a comedy all along. And the last thing I will probably play out with this, because I don't think we could bear putting you through the Charles Aznavour version, but the closing song was by a woman called Phyllis Hyman, who also played one of the fashion models in the scene with the fantastic Grisella, Carrie Nye. I think that's everything I have on Too Scared to Scream.
Phyllis Hyman, a lot of people, they compare her to Whitney Houston. She was kind of like the pre-Whitney Houston, and Whitney Houston got all the fame, and she just kind of faded into relative obscurity, and she passed away in 1995. But that's completely, what I'm about to say is a completely different topic, but I just want to mention that there. Do you feel, Justin, particularly, I mean, I love the 1982 feel of this film. Do you feel it might have fared better had it been released in 82 instead of having to wait until 85? Because by 1985, certainly, what audiences wanted by then was, not really slasher films, and certainly not detective-infused slasher films. But I think this film, had it been released in 1982 like it was supposed to be, it probably would have been a little more successful.
I kind of possibly, although because it was filmed in sort of October, November of 82, the earliest it would have come out would have been sort of early 83 or sort of the first half of 83. I kind of think the kind of slasher movie was, as a box office force, was pretty much done by that point. So I think they I don't know. And also, I think when we talked about a film like Fade to Black, which tried a very different approach to kind of like the teen slasher movie, and it failed to find an audience because it was a bit too cerebral or too offbeat for young audiences. I think that this would have, this idea that Mike Connors had of trying to make a film that appealed to young people, so putting in some Friday the 13th style violence, although as we mentioned, it's not really, it's not a particularly gory movie, but also with a sort of more adult themed, the idea of like a kind of cop show running through it. I think it's too many different things, and I don't think it would have gelled particularly with any audience, even if it was released a bit earlier. I don't necessarily think it would have been a big hit, although apparently did okay, but Mike Connors also said that if the film did well and he was able to pay back his neighbour his investment, he would look at doing more producing jobs, and I'm not sure if he ever did that. So I think it would have been, I would have thought they would have had a similar experience of like Nathan did, or I did, or any of us did when we first watched it, based on the image of the mask. And in fact, actually, the stuff I've seen of like the kind of cinema, the newspaper adverts for the film include that mask. So it wasn't just done for the VHS release; it was how the film was sold.
Well, it's interesting because the mask on the cover is a theatrical mask, and it would tie in with the characters, certainly both doormen characters, because they were both actors. So I think the guy wearing the mask would have been, would have given it a little more flavor. But one thing I was going to mention was I feel like this would have probably done its best had it been, been a 1978 or 1979 thriller. It would have fit in well with that kind of Eyes of Laura Mars, certainly The Fan from 1980. In that time period, I thought it probably would have done its best, but it's kind of a shame that it, waited around so long and just didn't really find much of an audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of we talked about many times a lot of these films. There was a glut of them, and so as he said, that Mike Connors thought he'd better sell it to Columbia or MGM, and then if he'd had that kind of major studio backing, then they would have, it would have been a much wider release and probably would have made more money. But, by that point, by 1985 or late 1984, the kind of slasher movie boat had kind of well and truly sailed as far as it being a thing. But even so, it's an odd movie. It's such a mishmash of various things, of comedy, slasher movie, kind of trying to be slightly TV cop show, and also having it's not a homophobic kind of. Well, I suppose it could be argued that is the reveal is like, you've got basically like a homicidal homosexual on the loose is. But it's I think it's just I think it would find it difficult to find any mainstream audience, I think, as a film. But an interesting one for us to talk about anyway. So, okay, well, that's the background. So, what was the consensus on the Facebook group about this film?
Well, out of 34 votes, a low number this week, 56% of those listeners enjoyed Too Scared to Scream, 33% were neutral, and 11% did not enjoy the film. And our listener of the week is Dave Rendon, and he writes, I was going to catch it on Tubi, but I was too scared to stream.
Oh,
you got your work cut out for you, Erik.
Oh, don't worry. I've got an epic one lined up.
Yeah, but before you do that, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and almost anywhere you catch your pods. And you can support the show for as little as $1 per month via Patreon. And our email address is thehysteriacontinues, that's one word, @gmail.com. Listen, the transition isn't working, guys. The email that I've been trying to use, people just aren't sending it to us. So just send it to our Gmail address. That's what you guys are doing now. So that's going to be our email address forever.
Joseph's transition didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Well, let's see if Erik can match Dave Rendon's joke of the week.
It's my joke of the week. It's so bright and fantastic.
Why is Too Scared to Scream like a medieval fortress? Because they both have an archer. They both have an archer. Why is no one laughing? That trumpeter is going to get he's going to hyperventilate soon if he doesn't take a break.
Well, thank you, Erik. You keep improving, which isn't too much surprise considering where you're starting from.
How rude.
So I have a little bit of feedback here. So it's, hello, gentlemen. I, the Hobgoblin, write to you hoping that you're doing well, but pleasantries aren't why I'm here. On the Serial Mom episode, Joseph lamented that no one wrote in, and when the quartet of you named back those who did write, I was not mentioned amongst the list of contributors. Sure, my feedback is sporadic, but every message sent is always from the bottom of my rotten heart, and I absolutely delight in hearing my emails read aloud. And I don't mean to sound like a jealous supervillain, but clearly I'm not doing my job right. So, to my mind, this must be rectified by more consistent feedback. To borrow a quote from Freddy Krueger, being forgotten about, now that's a bitch. I jest mostly, but don't think I've lost any love for the four of you. Your podcast is still my favourite after all these years. And before I go, I will leave you with a teaser. I might have come into possession of a legendary, very rare Blu-ray that you guys did a commentary for. How did that happen, you may ask? A very interesting story. But that, my friends, is for the next feedback. Until then, still yours, Hobgoblin.
Wait a minute, what Blu-ray is?
Yeah, because Savage Garden are a dreadful MOR band from Australia, aren't they?
Yeah.
Savage Water was DVD only, wasn't it?
Yeah,
well, unless the Hobgoblin made a mistake. I'm not saying, because I can't think of anything else that we've done that's particularly rare.
This is why we've forgotten you, Hobgoblin. You can't even get your formats right. Don't write in till you do a better job.
Well, we're very disappointed that Simon Logan hasn't written in, and all the other ones that I forget now.
Jay Bullington.
Yes, but do write in, or remember to leave your votes, and we'll be announcing very shortly what we will be covering for our Christmas extravaganza.
Jingle bells.
So, well, do we have anything left to say? We have some. We've got some Blu-ray announcements. We can't make them at the moment, but we have a roster of titles that we are hoping to be doing in 2021, which when we can tell you what they are, we will let you know. But some interesting titles coming up.
Yeah, we're looking at about 8 so far. So yeah.
Well, the ones we've done commentaries for all the Ruben Galinda Jr. slashers, Mexican slashers, so Cemetery of Terror, Don't Panic, and Grave Robbers, that have all been released now by Vinegar Syndrome. We've also done the commentary for Fade to Black, and of course Silent Madness
in 3D. And I believe the Blu-ray comes in 2 versions of 3D. So it has one for you guys with the fancy setup, but then it has the anaglyph version as well for myself and Joseph, who don't have the fancy setup.
Yeah, and check 88 Films too, because we are contributors on the I Know What You Did Last Summer box set.
Yes, which is it out yet?
It's they have it up on their website. They should have the pre-order link that says early December. So.
Yeah, so there's quite a few things in the pipeline which we can't talk about just at the moment, but rest assured there will be plenty more coming from the Hysteria Continues. Right, well, what are we covering next time?
Oh, it's me, and it's our Christmas special, and we're scraping the bottom of the barrel of the Christmas barrel, because we're going to do Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Or, well, Part 1.5, really, when you think about it. But no, I mean, I haven't watched Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 in a while, so I shouldn't really say it's awful, but I do remember it has a lot of footage of Part 1 in it, though.
Yeah, well, people say it's better to watch it after not watching Part 1, and it's not kind of it's not like Halloween and Halloween 2, like the original. On the 1981 version, which you can watch in a one long movie. This is Part 2. So it has more flashback in it than Hills of Ice Part 2, I think.
And if you are in the UK and Ireland, it is streaming on Amazon Prime for some reason. Amazon Prime is a great resource for sort of oddball horror selections. So it's on there if you want to have a watch. And I'm sure it's probably on YouTube.
Excellent. Okay. Yes, we'll be back for next time. And as far as Patreon goes this month, we're just about to record Rock and Roll Nightmare, aren't we, for Patreon? Is that out this month or next month?
Yeah, that's out this month. Along with Too Scared to Scream, we'll also be doing the top 3 from 1974.
Yes,
is that right?
Yeah, we're recording that next week.
Yeah, okay. It feels like we've been stuck in the 70s forever. It feels like we did 1970 like 20 years ago. Of course, 2020 has been 20 years long, so...
Well, yes, of course. And also there's the Algonquin, the first quiz, which was a fantastic experience for us all. So, yeah, join us over on Patreon for that. And, until next time, we'll catch you on the Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Excellent people.
Bye-bye.
I'll be there when all is